Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and design an intentional and powerful second half. Today, we are going to be talking about our life purpose, designed by God before we got confused and confounded. What does it look like? How do we reconnect with it? My guest today is Dr. Rivka-Goldstein. She's a relationship coach and author of Create a Life That Matters, How to Live and Love with Meaning and Purpose. Rivka, thank you so much for being on my show today.
Gina, thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to this mission and this message?
So let me begin by telling you that I had an opportunity to pursue a doctorate degree, but I didn't. And part of it was because before that, I was in the academia for almost a decade. And it was not until I found Judaism that I found what I was looking for. And so I just want to clarify that. And also in regards to my book, which is why we're here. So I wrote this book when I discovered at midlife and 40 that I was going to become a mother for the first time. I was overjoyed, Gina. I was so grateful. At last, after years of negative medical report, that I was finally going to be a mom. But then I was also stricken with anxiety. As a high-risk mother, I said, what if something happened to me? What would happen to my child? How would he know who his mother was and what we stood for and what life is about? So my husband is also a mature parent. So between us, there were 20 years. So this was going to be an adventure, to say the least. So I began writing him a love letter. And that letter turned into this book. And in that letter, I really I began by giving a lot of blessings. I said, that he should be a blessing to those people around him, that he should know his life purpose, his mission in life. And as when I started to write, I wanted more content. And I found this incredible rabbi who is a modern day sage. His name is Rabbi Manis Friedman. If you want to Google him, he's the most viewed and downloaded rabbi on YouTube. And I call him a modern sage and a master teacher because he was able to explain and describe in modern terms what the Torah tells us about the origin of human beings and why we're here and what we're all about. So I wanted to leave that with my son. I wanted to prepare him from life, from the beginning till the end, and everything in between, from dating to marriage to parenting, just everything to prepare him, including tragedy, how to handle tragedy. In fact, I wanted to call the book a life manual. The manual that we all lament about when things get bumpy and we get stuck and we say, life didn't come with a manual. Nobody taught us. We didn't learn this in school. And so I wanted to leave him a manual so that he cannot say, life didn't come with a manual. So that was really the purpose of this publication. It was all for my son. And I didn't expect it to become a bestseller because I thought I was just doing my dance, and it was for him. And my husband had the insight and the foresight to say, let's share it with everybody. And we did.
That's incredible. It's amazing how, as we grow older, you and I were talking about before we hit record, this midlife journey, and how it feels so much like you're almost like an adolescent again, but you're an adult. And I think that's what prompts us to really consider, what would I wish I had known? What do I need to know? What would I want my children to know? And so I think it's right in line with our reinvention almost, right? We get to this phase and we feel like there's things we still want to do, but we have kind of lost ourselves along the way. And you talk about, being confused and being confounded, and how do we reconnect with our purpose? How do you encourage people to do that? Because there are a lot of people that have lost their way, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Life happens, right? Situations come up and we end up heading in a different direction maybe than we thought in our 20s, right? What we thought we were going to do with our life in 20s looks very different at this age sometimes, looking back, doesn't it?
Right. So, Gina, what's interesting is that I think some people are lucky. They are born with parents who guide them every step along the way. It wasn't the case for me. So my parents divorced shortly after I was born. And in fact, my mother was going through a divorce when I was still in vitro. And I think I absorbed a lot of the anxiety, a lot of that stress. I came into this world with a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. And my mother, as I look back today, I realized she was trying to find her way. So because she was trying to find her way, she wasn't able to direct me. And I had to initiate myself to womanhood. In fact, for years, I always thought if I had to write another book, I would call it 100 Years to Become a Woman. But I didn't want it to be self-indulgent. I didn't want to write about me or my memoir. I just wanted to leave my son something he can use that's practical. But it really is based on years and years of being confused and lost and bumping my heads everywhere, trying to figure out what life is all about. In fact, one of my favorite fairy tales is that one of Ugly Duckling. And I think it's the journey of so many women. Ugly Duckling was born and she was hatched by maybe a mother goose or a duck. And she came into this world looking around and seeing that she didn't belong there. She didn't look like her brothers or sisters. She didn't fit in. She felt very alienated and ostracized by all the animals in the farm. She went to the chicken coop thinking, oh, that's where I belong. Oh, no, you didn't belong there. Get out. And then she went to the horse's stable and the barnyard. Everywhere she went, she was ostracized and ridiculed. And until one day, she saw a herd of swans and she discovered that she is a beautiful creation after all. And for me, that journey took a long time. I didn't think that I realized who I was till I was in my 40s. In fact, I would say right when my son was born, I started to feel more comfortable in my own skin. And I started to see that, all that had happened was not random. All of it was to lead me to where I am today. And in fact, if someone were to ask me what I would say to my younger self, I would say that, just you wait and see. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is going to turn out fine. Because I do remember spending my earlier part of my years just crying myself to sleep in my teens and in my 20s, feeling just that not the sense of belonging, looking for my purpose in life. I didn't want that for my son. I wanted him to know who he is right from day one and, right from the get-go. And who is he? He is a creation of the divine. He didn't come into this world randomly. He was here for reason and a mission and a purpose. And what is that mission? That mission is that he came here to do God's will. He came here to serve God. He didn't come here to fulfill his own needs. So like the first chapter in my book is called The Difference Between Living and Existing. Mm. And what is existing? Existing by definition is demanding. When to exist, you need a lot of resources. You demand resources. You need to eat, you need to sleep, you need a roof over your head, you need a support system. It's all about me and what I need to exist. Life is about what is needed of you. And what life is your contribution to the world. And so I wanted him to be very clear about that. I wanted my son to know that this is how he should navigate life, to be thinking about what he's needed for and what, not just what he needs. Mm. So as an example, when I send him out to school every day, I would tell him, I would say, Joseph, you should do the right thing, not just to do your best, because doing your best can mean, you could be the best criminal. Being the best is self-serving. Of course, you should do your best to fulfill your potential, but you should do it in a way of knowing that you're here to fulfill God's potential, what God needs from you. So I always say to him, do the right thing. And do the right thing means that do what God needs from you. You are a unique puzzle in God's vast eternal plan, and you should find out what that is. And the way to find out is we have an inkling. When we are still, God tells us why we're here. So like for you, Gina, you realize that you have this gift, you have this desire, you have this talent to share your wisdom through a podcast, and you went ahead and did it, and it felt good. It felt like, this is one of my purpose. And for the rest of us, we look around us and we say, who are the 9 people in my office? Who are the 9 people that I should have an influence? Or really a person has about 200 people in this sphere of influence that they can make a difference. And, we're all ambassadors of God. How do you carry yourself, and how do you present yourself, and how do you treat others based on what God tells us that we should? So that's where we begin our purpose, to understand that, who we are and what we're here to do. Because if we don't know that, we're confused. Mm-hmm. If we don't know we're here to serve God, then everything becomes a question.
Yes. And I think that there's so much information that we've taken in, especially by the time we've hit midlife. A lot of people that I know, their parents had ideas of what they should do, what their daughter or son should do. And it sometimes puts people's feet on a path that isn't authentic to who they were designed to be. Not that they aren't good at it, but they're not fulfilled. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
There are people who have done wonderful things and are good at things, but they feel either lost or empty. And I think that's why there's so many people when they hit our season of life, Rivka, that begin to feel like they're searching.
Right. So you brought up a good example because, in the Asian culture, which is where I grew up, you always, you pigeonhole all the children. You have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, or accountant. Half of my family is all of that, and then you're right. And then you hit a certain age, you say, life cannot be just about, again, my existence, because, we teach children from a young age that they should go to school, get good grades, and then they should be able to get a good job so that they can buy a nice house. And all of that, we teach them everything, how to brush their teeth, how to cross the road, and how to be careful of strangers. But we never taught them about life. Or no, we barely teach them about what life is all about. And life is about my contribution. My contribution, what am I here to do? How can I make this piece of God's green earth a better place? And the only way we can find out is through finding out about what God tells us. God did not create us, put us in this world, and leave us or play dice with us and try to tell us to find out on our own. We were given these instructions. We were told what is expected of us. And until we find that out, we're always going to feel a little confused, and we're going to always feel like, that, as I said, that, there's an appointment, but you don't know what it is. And you forgot where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be. A good analogy was this. I tell my son this story about this man who is very patriotic. And one day he decided that he was going to go to Washington, D.C., to connect with his roots. And he goes there and he sees a funny looking house. And he sees people singing, and they knocks on the door. And some people came out, and they didn't dress like Americans. And so he asked them, he said, who are you? Why you live in America for 30 years? They say yes. And then he said, why do you not dress America? And then he said, do you eat hamburgers and hot dogs? They say, no, we eat a kind of fish that is smoked and different from everybody. And then he said, oh, that's strange. And he said, and you don't sing American songs? You don't dress American? You don't eat American food? You should be ashamed of yourself. You live in America, you take advantage of America, and you don't fit in. What are you doing? And they say, oh, we're the Norwegian embassy. He says that if we look like you and if we act like you, we will be out of a job. So the point of it is that we come into this world and we hear this all the time, that we're only sojourning. We're here only for a period of time. We're only here for 80, 90, 100 years. But we're really here as ambassadors to God. We're not here to fit in, so to speak. But we are here to fit in because, we are here to be united with all people. But then at the same time, we must remember we also have a mission. And our mission is to show the world who God is. So all of us essentially have that mission.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about before we hit record, we were just discussing kind of the world in a short conversation. And I was talking about the idea of worship. And you liked how I described. So yes. I thought this would be a good place to discuss that. Basically, I believe that we are designed by God and in his image. And because we're designed in his image, there's a God-shaped hole in all of our hearts. So we are designed to worship. And if we reject God, if we reject the idea of God, that need for worship, that desire for worship doesn't go away. We just seek to fill it with something else. And when we misappropriate that worship, I think it causes us a lot of suffering and confusion.
This is correct, Gina, because worship is immersive. When you worship, it's not something you eat. It's not just something, but when you worship, your whole entire being become it. And so when we worship something that is above us, when we worship God, we become godly. When we worship something that's below us, then we diminish, we feel diminished. What are some of the things that we worship today in America? We worship love. And here's a radical thought. Are you ready? So in America and Hollywood, for that matter, convince us that, love is all we need. Love conquers all. Love will see us through. And, we're just a culture of worshiping love. And so much so that we now forget, like when we get married, we forget that love, we have to be careful because we forget that we are marrying a person and that not love. And sometimes we forget and we're married to love and we forget about the person that we're supposed to love. Now, the proof of it is, we fell out of love. So now the marriage ends. But that's not right. That's not healthy because we didn't marry love. We married the person. So we should not put so much, like love is an emotion. Love is unstable. It's up, it's down, it's sideways. Sometimes we feel it, sometimes we don't feel it. We cannot build a home or a marriage based on love alone because it's flimsy. It's not a firm foundation. What should we build it on? We have to have a deep understanding that what's a better word than love is, how about that belonging? How about the fact that, we belong to each other? We are home with each other. So that when you belong to each other and you have a home with each other, that's stronger. That's better than love. So that, and how about respect? Respect and being respectful and considerate of your spouse is more important than love, because when there is love, when there's respect, the love will resurface. Two people that love each other cannot be together forever. But two people who respect each other, who is kind to each other, can live together forever. Mm-hmm. So the worship of love is erroneous. It's wrong. It's, when is love appropriate? Love is appropriate for someone who is important in your life, like your spouse or your children or whoever, your family members, because then that's whom you should love. But people who are not important to you, no matter how much you love them, like the celebrities, as we say, they're never going to be important, no matter how much you love them.
And I think we defined love. I think the way that we define love varies as well, right? So if we're worshiping this idea of love, because I think it's really the idea of love, that romantic butterfly, Hollywood version of love, where everything's always, and they lived happily ever after, right? So I think love in the context of what we worship is different than what God designed love to be. There's different kinds of love. There's friendship love, right? There's family love. There's committed love. And now, of course, we say, I love ice cream. That's clearly not the same kind of love. And so I think when I think about love, agape love is the highest form of love. And it's the love that does what's best for the receiver. It's not selfish.
That's correct. And God gave us the model for that. God gave us the model of love. So in Hebrew, the word ahava has a numerical value of 13. So from the numbers, we try to understand. God gave us a clue to the holy language of Hebrew to try and understand. So ahava, love, has the numerical value of 13. And what's the other word that share the numerical value of 13 is echad, which is unity. And so through that, God gave us a clue about what love is. When there is unity, when there is peace, there is, it's all connected to the number 13. So then another interesting thing is that, we all came into this world with one of the 12 astrological influences, for example. And so, for example, if you're born in the month of Cancer, you tend to be a little bit oversensitive, and you may be a little bit, the word is, how do you rise above it? How do you rise above your 12 astrological influences? It's 13, and 13 is love, through love and through unity. So you're right. So God gave us a model on how to love.
It's interesting how we are quick to define ourselves. And I think by the time we've reached midlife, we've been defined in a lot of ways, very clearly, like what kind of mother, what kind of wife, what kind of business person, what kind of daughter, what kind of friend. And those definitions can serve us, but they can also shackle us, because if we're so bought into that, for some people, it is the astrological signs. For some people, it is how they fit into their family or please their parents. Even at our age, people are still busy pleasing their parents. And I think that is one of the ways we lose sight of our purpose, is buying into what these external things say we are. Oh, well, I'm like you said, a Cancer. I don't do astrological signs, but I hear people define themselves by it in such a way that it limits their ability to grow. It's like it's now an excuse for how I behave. And I think by the time we hit midlife, we need to examine the ways that we've defined ourselves and the ways that we have allowed things to define us, because we do have the authority in our life. We maybe don't use it, but I think the way that we've been defined, the way that we choose to believe we are, is sometimes the biggest roadblock to getting to our purpose, because we're behind things that are blinding us to that authentic call that we feel in our heart, right? Like people who say, for example, oh, artists can't make money. You can't make a living being an artist, for example. But there are people who that call is so strong in their heart, so they kind of stuff it away, right? That's the first example that comes to mind. So I think if we're creating a life that matters, I think we have to understand what we have bought into and what is really not serving us anymore.
Absolutely, Gina. I teach 18-year-olds writing classes, and every time when I see them once a week, I would welcome them as saying, oh, welcome the new Gina. welcome the new Mary, whatever their name is. I would always try to remind them a subliminal message that you should see yourself anew every day, because God creates the world anew every second. He creates and sustains the world every second. And so that we should also think about ourselves that way. The truth is, when I say welcome the new Gina, I'm really saying connect with your true original self, not the new self you're going to invent every day, but your true core that you have lost sight of along the way, because as we say, what the society tells us and what our parents tell us that who we are and all of that, we have to go back to the original plan. And the original plan is who God tells us that who we are and what God needs from us. We didn't come into this world for our own needs. We come into this world to serve God and fulfill God's needs, because it's His world, it's His plan. We're only here for 100 years maximum or so, 100 years or so. So that's why we need to find out what God needs from us. And every single one of us have this unique mission that He needs. But then you're also touching on a point about ourselves, So there is a lot of wisdom and truth and good in self-discovery and self-awareness. In fact, it has become such a movement for us in the last, 30 years or so. But we have to be careful, because the self-discovery movement or self-awareness can easily turn into a little bit of self-absorption and self-centeredness. I think we have to be careful with that, because, as an example, a person can get caught up with therapy, going to therapy for years and years and years, and never feel like they're good enough and that they couldn't get out of it. Or, you look at some people that go to the gym and they're working out and they don't know when to stop. So they never feel like they're good enough. They always feel like, I guess I got to get better. And so we got to be careful about that, because that can be paralyzing. That can stop us from going out there to do something that we really want to do. You can say, for example, a woman may want to start a business, but then she feels like, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to. So that's something to be aware of. And the way to go about it is to just say, will what I do bring about a contribution in the world? Will they make the world a better place? And if it is, it's a good project. And then she should go ahead and do it. So I think that's something to be concerned about, because I think that narcissism is a disease of our generation. We're too much self-absorbed sometimes, and that we forget, again, we're not here to look after our own needs. We're here to take care of others. And that's a very fine line for women, because women tend to be already over nurturing. We're always taking care of others, and we don't take good care of ourselves. We don't take care of ourselves enough. So I'm aware of that. I think that women has to do a lot of self-care. But I think that we don't have a problem with giving. We just have a problem with giving purposelessly. So we have no problem cleaning the house, for example. But if we clean the house and everybody else around does not respect the things that we do, and that's when it becomes exhausting. So it's not the work itself that we are complaining about, So I think women are awesome. I mean, we are superhumans. If I look in one day about what God gives to a woman, sometimes I say, please, God, don't think so highly of us. You're giving us a lot, you have to take care of your husband and then the children. You got to take care of the community. You got to make sure everybody's happy, so to speak, so woman is practically superhuman. We're all practically superhuman. So we should congratulate ourselves. We should just really pat ourselves on the shoulder every day and say, you're doing good. We don't have to wait for someone else to congratulate us. We should congratulate ourselves every day that we're awesome, that we're really doing a good job. And as long as we know that what we're doing is what God needs from us, and motherhood is for some of us, and certainly an important sacred duty, and marriage, God needs us to be one, and we do it through marriage, and so all that is good, a good project, good mission.
Mm-hmm. And there's the sense of purpose. The closer we get to that call, the closer we get to, I guess, the purity of it, Because I think we can do what we're called to do, but if we're doing it from, like you said, that more self-serving place, or, maybe we're so in need of other people's approval, it can distort the joy that would naturally come from that service.
Well, absolutely. Some of us, unfortunately, we've taken that drugs. You know what, the drug for approval, the drug for acceptance, for applause, is paralyzing. It's very hard. It's a form of addiction. I said, trade all that in for another A, for awe. Let's just trade all all that needs for awe of God. If we could focus on the awe of God, then all of a sudden we say, I only need God's acceptance. I need God's approval. I only need God's applause. And if I'm doing right by God, I don't need to be doing right by people. But when you're doing right by God, you naturally you do right by people. So that's the interest dichotomy of it all.
Because it is the compass that points you in the right direction. It keeps us from falling into that narcissism or that self-absorption or that neediness, if you will. Because, like I said earlier, we have that God-shaped, if you could imagine, there's not physically a God shape there, but we are designed to worship God. And in that pursuit of God, and in that pursuit of worshiping him, and in that pursuit of fulfilling the purpose that he gave to us, that's where the freedom and the joy and that the shackles begin to break. Because right now I get a lot of emails about like self-love, self-care, and I wrestle with it because, yes, I believe that we as women need to care for ourselves. That is good stewardship of our emotions, our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, is to take the time to breathe well, do yoga, pray, take a bath, buy the candle and light it. These things are all so soul-serving. They really are. And by neglecting those, we become empty, I think. And so it has a place. But I struggle a lot with the idea of self-love because I'm a fallible human. I make mistakes. I think wrong thoughts. I make wrong moves. And if I become the center of my universe, that's where that narcissism comes in. That's where other people are never good enough for me, my spouse or my friends. And we become dangerous. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
You couldn't have said it better, Gina. You couldn't have said it better. That was perfect. That was absolutely correct. So it's a fine line. We do have to be careful. And this is what happened to our society when we forget God. This happened to us, every one of us, when we forget, who's our role model, who's our commander. I'd like to use the analogy of the army. We're here as God's soldiers. We're here to serve God. And what does it mean? Every day when we pray to God, it's like we put on our armor. Mm-hmm. We put on the armor to go out to fight this war against our, self-centeredness. And that really is the problem. You look at all the problems in the world, terrorism, and everything is from, greed, and everything is from that self-serving place. It's for me, it's for what I want and what I need, because we forget we're here to be God's soldiers. And to be God's soldiers means that we wake up in the morning, we put on our gear and our uniform and the form of prayers. We align ourselves with God and we say, God, I'm here today. What do you need from me today? I'm ready. I'm ready to surrender. I'm ready you're my commander. I'm ready to do what you need from me. So I think that's a good place to start our day. And from that place, you can navigate all the rest. We are told that, yes, our body is that we don't own our body. Our body is God's temple. And so, yes, we must take care of temple. We must, eat good food and eat healthy and do all the things that nurture our body. But we also know that we're much more than our body. We are spirituals. We have a soul, and that soul lives on. Soul is eternal. Our soul lives on even after we pass. Even after the body goes back to dust, the soul is still alive and it lives on forever. And so that's something to remember. That's a good bearing. Every day we wake up, we should always remember that that, we're all good. Someday we're going to return to dust, but our soul lives on. And so the body is only here as a vessel to carry our soul, and it's only here to help us fulfill our mission. So that's the purpose of the body, which is interesting because, you would think that after a person passed away, they should be lighter, but it's the opposite. We become just a clump of a ton of clay, or, and we become heavier because the spirit lives. The spirit is what carries us. The spirit is what makes us light, but the body is heavy. Hence the difference again between living and existing. When you're living and you are contributing, you are engaging your soul purpose, you are alive, you are light, you are happy, you're joyful. But then when you go back to being focusing on your existence, and you look around, you start coveting, as God tells us not to. God that created us know what we're made of. He knows what, he gave us the right advice. Don't covet, because when you covet, you're going to feel heavy. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I love word pictures. They kind of really help me put ideas into a concrete concept, right? And I think definitely in Judaism, they use word pictures and parables to explain difficult concepts because it helps our minds wrap around it in a way like, yes, that makes sense to me. And so as you're talking about that heaviness, we're definitely in a point where there's so much heaviness. We've lost our way in the world, and there's fear and anxiety, and the focus is to keep us afraid and to keep us feeling anxious. And that heaviness is something that I want people to understand. They don't have to stay heavy. Like, that heaviness is a choice, choosing in our lives what we listen to, what we believe, the influences we allow in our eyes and our ears, right? If we're thinking about creating a better life, no matter what we've done for the first 40, 50, 60 years, you said earlier, the new Gina, the new Rivka, the new day, there's always the hope and the reality of turning back to your purpose and moving towards your purpose and lifting that heaviness, regardless of what's happening in the world around us. I think we've bought into the lie that everything that's going on around us is like our doom or there's nothing I can do, right? We throw in the towel, but the reality is we are created in the image of God, and we have the ability to connect to his spirit and live a life that's not dictated by other people's expectations or the news or the world powers, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like, creating a better life is really unplugging from those beliefs that we have no power and recognizing that we are created for a purpose. And that focus will set you free.
Absolutely. And, in the Jewish prayer in the morning, the first prayer we said when we wake up is a prayer of gratitude. And then afterward, there is a series of prayer. And one of them is, blessed are you, God, who opened the eyes of the blind. And because when we are sleeping, it's like as though we are blind. We close our eyes. When we wake up in the morning, we open our eyes, and that's the blessing we say. And it's so much deeper than that, because whenever I think about that, I said, God, open my eyes to see who I truly am. Who am I? Help me to see me as who you created me to be. Help me to see my husband as who he is and not what I want to see that who he is. He is a holy soul. Help me to see that side of him, not just be caught by what my physical eyes see, which is just a body. And help me, God, to see reality, to see the world through your eyes. Help me to see everything proper. And I think that's an important prayer that we should say every single day. Will help us also to align us for all the day. And we help us to see that the enemy is not the father-in-law, the mother-in-law. The enemy is not the sister-in-law. or the brother, or or your husband's ex-wife, or his future ex-wife, or it's not his girlfriend, it's not your stepchildren. The enemy is not that community member that don't agree with us. It's not that person on the chat group that is, pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, or the Democratic or Republican. Those are not our enemies. Our enemies are certainly not our husband and not our children. Sometimes we act that way toward them, like, don't shoot the messengers, don't shoot, you're shooting the bullets at the wrong people. Those are not our enemies. Our enemies is a real dark force. There is a dark force that exists for a reason and purpose. And it moves us forward. It it elevates us. But our mission is to win that war. And it's a real force. And it's a real force, and you can call it the evil inclination. You could call it selfishness. You could call it, like I call it, the dark force. And we are fighting that dark force, and it's very real. And the dark force convinces us we're not good enough, or we're getting old, and being old loses its worth and its value. It convinces us it's this tiny, quiet voice in our head that is constantly chipping at us, and that's our real enemy. Not a human being that's outside of us, and certainly not ourselves. But that dark force is something we should reckon with, and that we should be aware of. That's the word. If you're not aware of the enemy, then the enemy takes over, and you go down the ditch. So you got to be aware that there is this dark force that is constantly trying to convince you otherwise.
Isn't that true? I've actually had that conversation with different people over the years that, recognizing the powers behind. I used to work with someone who was diametrically opposed to my belief system and wanted me to know that she was diametrically opposed. So she would really be very kind of aggressive about her beliefs in the way, not a discussion of this is what I believe, what do you believe? But like an in my face, throwing it at me. And I had to keep reminding myself that she doesn't really understand what she's doing. She doesn't understand why she's fighting against me. She thinks she knows. And I had to work through that. And I think if I'm going to bridge that to what we're talking about, that's what keeps us distracted. That's what keeps us from fulfilling our purpose. That's what keeps us from finding real joy in spite of what's going on around us, because that's what joy is. Joy is not happiness. Joy is an abiding peace and contentment in spite of what's going on around us. And if we are constantly at war with the wrong things and the wrong people, we're never at peace. It's kind of like wearing your helmet backwards and you're just swinging the sword at whatever, right? You're running into things, and it feels very much like everything is resistance, right? Because we're fighting the wrong things. We're focusing on the wrong things. And in order to create a life that matters, we need to become aware of those tendencies, of those misdirected emotions and beliefs, right? And get back to what is truth. Truth is concrete. This idea that truth is relative is baloney. It's not relative. That's why we're in trouble, because you have to have a foundation to stand on to keep from sinking. Truth is the foundation, and it's God's truth, at least for me, and I know people don't want to offend other people, but it's like, I'm going to be 55 soon. And it's like, I've gotten to this point and I have the life that I have because I run back to him and I remind myself of truth, because it is an anchor to our soul in the midst of this world where, like you said, there's a dark force, there's resistance, but we don't have to feel shackled by that. We are impacted by it. But to create a life that matters, we got to quit focusing on the wrong things. And we have to have a foundation to stand on so that we can stand firm in understanding who we are and why we're here.
And joy is a decision, not a condition.
Yeah.
We have to choose to be happy. I call it faith it till you make it. Because when you're happy, then things are good. You don't wait for things to be good before we're happy. One of the quotes that I loved when I was growing up was, when the heart cries for what it has lost, the spirit laughs at what it has found.
Well, Rivka, we've had a fantastically inspiring and encouraging conversation today. And we've definitely spoken on a soul level, which is wonderful. And so I'd like for you to think about what 3 things would you like people to really anchor in on? What are 3 takeaways that you want people to really take to heart from our conversation today, or maybe something that hasn't come up yet, but you really want to share that? What 3 things would you share?
Gina, I could give you 3 profound quotes, but I want to say just 3 things. Joy, joy, and more joy. And how do we get joy? First, by remembering who we are. We remember who we are. We are God's children. We're God's soldiers. We're here to serve God. And the second, how do we become joyful? By doing what He expects from us, to do God's mission. So, and then joy will ensue. Because to be happy, we don't need gimmicks. We just have to do the right thing. Just do the right thing. Think the right thoughts. Do the right thing. So my blessing to you, Gina, and to all your listeners is that you should have joy, joy, and more joy. And it's up to you to create that joy.
Thank you. Rivka, thank you so much for being on my show today and for sharing truth and light and having an honest and sometimes difficult conversation for people to hear. A lot of people are running from this kind of conversation. So I want to thank you for boldly sharing that truth and being God's soldier today and sharing His truth today. I really appreciate that I'm not alone in the world,
Right.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina. God bless you.
God bless you too. Today, friends, I've been speaking with Dr. Rivka-Goldstein, and she is a relationship coach and the author of Create a Life That Matters: How to Live and Love with Meaning and Purpose. And if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 255, I will have links to Dr. Rivka, her book, and her website, askdrrivka.com. And while you're there, please leave your name and email address and join my tribe. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Friends, if this has been a conversation that stirs your spirit, if this is something that has really begun to niggle at you, as we would say, I would encourage you to take some time and hold a space for it and really consider what it is you believe, what it is you think you're here for, what it is that's calling to your spirit that maybe that you're not giving time and space to. Really give yourself the opportunity to reconnect with all of these things. And we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me at our tribe at feminineroadmap.com and let me know what it is that you're getting from these podcasts. What did you learn today? What is the thing that really spoke to your spirit today? Thank you for joining us. I look forward to bringing more inspirational and encouraging podcasts in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.